At She Can, we tell women's stories, how women got to where they are today. And I'm really excited to welcome Nimee Dhuloo today, a South African speaker, author, and coach. Nimee, you find innovative solutions to workplace challenges, and you also authored the book Living on Purpose. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me today. It's really great to be here. So yes, I have recently authored a book called Living on Purpose. I'm a mom. I have two children, aged 32 and 27, two girls, and they are really the love of my lives. So I am very, very committed to finding solutions to workplace challenges. That's correct. I have a passion for human resources, and I've always wanted to work in an environment where I can influence strategy that has a direct impact on the way in which people are treated, in the way in which they are led, and in the way in which they are able to bring out the best in themselves.
Nimee, and that is such a beautiful purpose. Tell us a bit more how you got to that place. When did you think I'm good at that, or this is what I want to do? How did you get there?
So that's a great question. I started my career in the business environment, and through that, I noticed that a lot of people had different challenges and almost always didn't have that outlet. And I found myself being drawn into some of the issues, trying to find solutions for them. It was almost like I had this calling to really be able to identify the problem and get right to the heart of it, and be able to give advice and guidance to people that almost gave them a very objective view to how they should see the issue, being able to separate the facts from the feelings. It was something I realized that I was really good at. And so I diverted my career from being fully in operations and business into much more of being able to lead and direct people.
Nimee, and what would you say is your main motivator now? You've done this for, a long time.
Yes, I think my main motivator is I've been through some really challenging situations in life. I'm motivated by the ability to rely on myself. I'm motivated on the ability to be self-sufficient. I don't want to have to rely on anyone for my survival or for my success. I believe that I'm the golden goose, and if I'm able to really take care of myself, empower myself, feed myself with as much knowledge as possible, I believe then it just sets the benchmark for me, and that is continuously being stretched until I perfect everything that I possibly can, which is limitless because you learn every single day.
Nimee, that sounds so perfect. How did you arrive at that spot where you are now, where you speak with that unbelievable depth and confidence and knowledge that that's exactly who you are and that you can do that and that you're fully independent?
So a couple of years ago, probably to be quite exact, around 19 years ago, my husband passed, and my kids were very young at that stage, extremely, extremely young. He was quite a pillar for me. I was a professional, and I had a very demanding job. So he was the one who took the kids to school every day, got them up for school, and really took care of that role that I often didn't have the time for. And one day he was just gone, and I felt as if the rug had been pulled out from under my feet. I didn't only lose a partner, I also lost a very strong support system. I also realized at that time, because he had a business, and at that time, because I didn't know enough about the business he had been running, a lot of people took a lot of advantage of me. I lost a lot of money, and I ended up in a lot of debt. So I had lost a husband. I had two children to raise. I was a single parent. I had enormous debt, and I had to make a choice. Was I going to lay down and play dead, or was I going to rise up to this and show everybody, including myself, most importantly, myself and my kids, because I had to set an example for them, that irrespective of what life was handing me, I had two choices. I could either go with the flow or I could create my own flow. And I decided that I wanted to create my own flow, that I wanted to defy the odds, and that I wanted to prove that I could be successful despite the barriers that had crept up around me and despite all of the obstacles that I was encountering. And I think that's probably where the majority of my resilience, it was in those years that I built the most amount of resilience.
Nimee, what a tragic story that you turned into your superpower, though, right? You really turned it into something that uh, is now who you are and who that made you who you are. Nimee, so what other qualities would you say you have? You obviously have an enormous amount of resilience that you had to learn and acquire. What other qualities make you good at what you do?
So I have the ability to have a lot of foresight. So I could see a problem coming way down the road, and I'm able to create solutions preempting that problem, or often be able to implement a solution that almost negates or mitigates the problem that could potentially arise in the future. That is something that I'm very good at. I also am able to make decisions, and often they are informed by very good judgment, and often they are the right decisions. It's not that I haven't made mistakes, I've made plenty of them, but I am very good at judgment. I'm very good at being able to call a situation exactly the way it is. I'm very, very much able to identify a problem and get right to the heart of it immediately. And I'm often, most times, often right about exactly what it is I perceive to be the problem.
Nimee, so you were alluding to mistakes, and that's part of everyone's journey. Tell us a little bit of pitfalls along your way, other than what you've already described, which is a very tragic incident that has really changed your life and your children's life. What other challenges did you have to overcome, and how did you do that? How did you, uh, pay off the debt? And how did you, when the mountain is quite big, how did you start walking?
So I think you get to a point where you realize that there has to be more than one solution. You cannot just put yourself in a box and say, well, I'm going to work and continue working, because if you're working, you have a fixed income, and that fixed income can only go so far. So I had to start thinking about more creative ideas as to how I can generate significant income in a shorter space of time. And so I decided the only way to do that was to really become my own rainmaker and to start my own consulting firm. I had the skills, I had the tenacity, and I had the resilience. And so that's what I did. So about 20 years ago, I started my own consulting firm. I walked away from permanent employment with absolute faith and belief that I would make this. I took on projects that expected me to travel across the world. Some of them were high-risk projects, and some of them required me to travel into remote areas by myself. But I did it because I knew that that was the way. Number one, I could learn. Number two, I could build enormous capability. And number three, I could name my price. And because of that, I was able to really acquire in-depth and intense knowledge, and able to create the ability to create income in a shorter space of time. I think for me, that was probably one of the biggest pitfalls that I was able to mitigate. And the realization that nobody places a ceiling on how much I can earn, because that for me was a big ticket item. If I had stayed where I stayed, I would have had the same outcome. And I needed to change the outcome, which meant that I needed to change the things that I did. And I needed to do different things to achieve a different outcome. So that was primarily one of the pitfalls that I mitigated. I think the second challenge for me was realizing that my husband had run a business for over 15 years and I didn't know anything about it.
Mm.
I didn't know what he did. I didn't know how he did it. I didn't know who owed him money. I didn't know how he bought or how he paid for the stock he had. And I realized then that I should have paid more attention. I should have taken a lot more interest, because it would have made the journey so much easier for me. And I would have been able to hold my own and not allow people to pull the wool over my eyes. Because of my ignorance and because of my lack of education and knowledge around what he did, it actually impaired me and allowed me to be taken advantage of. So those were two of the major lessons that I learned, that allowed me to be able to build a lot more resilience to move forward.
Mm. It's amazing to me. I'm just listening in awe. Nimee, I'm wondering what top tips would you give to our listeners, mainly women of all different ages? How does one build a life of purpose? What tips would you give?
So I think firstly, you really have to understand, and you really got to feel, what is that thing that gets you up every day? What is that thing that, no matter how bad you're feeling, no matter whether you have a headache or whether you're just not in the mood to get up, what is that thing that says, this is the reason why you have to? When you discover that reason, that becomes your purpose, and it fuels everything that you could possibly need in order to get you going. So for me, the first thing is to really understand who you are and what is it that you want to achieve out of your life, and what is that driving purpose behind why you are here. What's your agenda? What are you here to create? What are you here to achieve? The second thing I would say is, whether you have a business or you have a partner that has a business, really get to understand what they do. Take an interest, make it your business. Sometimes we get very bogged down with life, and we allocate and abdicate responsibility and accountability to someone else when we actually should be taking that accountability for ourselves. So I would say, really get to know what's happening around you and be present in that moment. The third thing I would like to say is, we raise kids, and sometimes I think we enforce a lot of our ways of life on our kids. And I've learned through the years of having to raise two very feisty young women who are extremely successful today, and I'm so proud of them. I've learned to allow kids to really become their own person, because I think that can become a huge form of stress for any parent when you are constantly having to worry about your kids. I think I've learned over the years that you instill the values that you can in them, and then you allow them to be who they are, because that means they become very responsible adults and individuals. They love who they are and they love what they do. And that piece brings you and makes you a much more happier parent. And then the last thing probably that I would like to share is, have a rainy fund. Have that fund where you save, and you are constantly looking for opportunities to create new streams of income, because you can never have enough, simply because you're not just doing it for yourself, you're also doing it to pay it forward. You're doing it to help others. There cannot be a purpose that starts and stops just with you. It has to extend beyond you and beyond what you can do for others. So I would say, really start that fund, generate as much income as you can, save it, and utilize it to improve not just your lives, but the lives of others.
Yeah. Nimee, in the sort of given that we haven't got 3 hours to chat now, I would love to dive into
Yes.
each one of those tips and really get to the nitty-gritty of it, because it's so easy to say, in a way, we have to let our kids become themselves. But when you are in that
Yes.
seat as a mom, I find that really hard. We birth these children and then they get on their way, and then you're just meant to sort of like, wave them goodbye. It's the hardest thing. So
It is the hardest thing.
how did you get to the point where you knew the best thing I can do right now is actually take a step back.
So I think you learn from experience over the years. And I think it's the concept of understanding that our kids come through us and not for us.
Yeah.
And because you understand that, you realize that they are their own persons. And if you have throughout your life acquired the knowledge, the emotional intelligence to understand that life is going to throw many pitfalls. You know, you've made many mistakes. You know, you haven't had a perfect life. You know that your kids are going to make the same mistakes. And all you can do is be there to give them that advice, because in hindsight, there's a lot of things you would do differently now if you had known better then. So the important thing is to be able to impart that knowledge. I never stop giving advice. Just because I let my kids go doesn't mean I don't give them any advice. Any opportunity I get to give them advice, I do it. But at the end of the day, I realize that they're adults in their own right, and that they've got to make decisions and choices. I can't make all of them for them. And sometimes they're going to falter and they're going to learn from that. And sometimes they're going to make the right decisions. The important thing is that I'm going to catch them when they make the wrong decision and they need my help. And I'm going to cheer them on when they make the right decision and are successful at it. And it's all about trial and error. But the important thing is recognizing that there are people in their own right, and that you need to let them free to explore life the way you've explored life and be able to discover it for themselves.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's been a hard lesson, but it's been a lesson that I've had to understand is important for my peace and for their happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Nimee. That was absolutely beautiful. So, who are your role models? Who are the people who inspire you and motivate you?
So over the years, I've been very fortunate to have had really great leaders as my bosses or my superiors, and they've really, I've learned an incredible amount from them in terms of being able to really, it's not just about listening to what they were saying, but they were also very good role models and leading by example. So I think from a corporate space, I've really learned an incredible amount from them. I've also learned the whole concept of resilience from my mom. My mom lost my dad when I was only 6 years old, and she was a single parent to me and to my brother and my sister. And the resilience she displayed over the years was just phenomenal. So she was an incredible role model to me. And I learned a lot from her on how to embrace life and how to look forward to life and how to be positive about life and how to strive for better, irrespective of what life was handing you. It didn't define who you were, and it didn't put a boundary on what you could become. And I think for me, those were very essential lessons that I learned from my mom and some of the leaders, previous leaders, and also leaders that I'm exposed to now in the kind of work that I do, the kind of businesses that I acquire. I think, I look for contracts where I can really learn from the people that I'm working with, because that inspires me every day to do so much better than I am, because I think the sky's the limit in terms of learning and empowerment. And if you're looking for people who are at your level, the chances are you're not going to grow. So I'm constantly looking for someone who's smarter than me, who's better than me, and who can really teach me a lot. I'm inspired by that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's really this curiosity, I think, is such an incredible driving
Yes.
force. Nami, and so what are your plans and goals for your future? What are the next years going to look like?
So I think, I'm definitely someone who loves to set goals. And I don't just set goals at the beginning of the year. I set goals all the time. I don't believe there's a time frame to set goals. I think your needs change, your interests change. And when those things change, you set new goals. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to coincide with the start of a new year. It has to coincide with the changes with life and the way your life is changing, or any other experiences that you have, they then set the basis for new goals. So I'm constantly striving to set new goals. I'm very driven to meet them. So I don't like to not achieve my goals. It's something that I'm very pedantic about. And I'm very mindful in crafting my goals, and I'm very mindful in putting strategies in place to achieve them. So it's not just something I write down, it's something I review on a regular basis. I'm constantly looking at how am I faring towards that goal? What can I do differently? Sometimes I have to change course because it's not working for me, and that's also okay. So those are some of the things that the future holds for me, is a lot of goal setting. I love traveling, so there's a lot of goals that involve traveling with my kids. It's something we do together. It's the time I get to spend quality time with them, because we're all together. The third goal that I have set is to start a scholarship foundation, which I am going to be launching this year for young students, and I'm really hoping that I can make a difference in some way or another for that. And the next goal, or the other big ticket item on my list, is completing the sequel to my book. So I have started a second book, which I hope to accomplish soon, and a number of other little stories that I am writing, but also journals that I'm developing. So those are some of the things that keep me very busy outside of my consulting work and the HR strategies that I'm implementing for a number of clients.
Nimee, this was a really inspiring talk and conversation and your story, and I'm so thankful for you for taking the time and telling it to us.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for your time and for having me.